All right, I love it. I should have known, and I did know, that this would get things sparked up. And I'm really enjoying the back and forth with some of you in the comments section. I regret that I haven't done more, but I'm going to try. This is my last week's holidays. I'm going to try and make a little bit of hay while the sun shines. I got a lot of other things to do. Uh-oh. You can see I'm going to be playing a video game on the big screen here after this video is done. You caught me. So just in engaging in some of the comments, I think some more definitions are kind of in order, or some clarifications, and I would like your help with this. Because we seem to be, obviously we're still hung up on the idea that morality is subjective. A lot of people have been sort of challenging me on the idea that to express that morality is subjective while acting as though it's objective is not hypocritical. I think it exposes a double-mindedness at the very least. If you claim to have a certain set of standards and then you behave in a different way, well, what's more meaningful, your actions or your words, right? So I think it is evidence of a double-mindedness. And some have asked, well, I can still put my, teach my children how to think and not what to think, and then express to them what my standards are. And I would agree you could do that. But what you can't do, and still claim that morality is subjective, is enforce it in any way. So you have to be prepared that the children that you've taught how to think may see things differently than you do, and may have their own subjective set of standards. And what if those standards are things that you find morally reprehensible? You can say that you'd let them get away with that, but I don't think so. I don't think that any of us as parents would allow our children to run around still hitting Sally. If we taught them how to think, but they still saw their own way because everything is subjective, you have no more right to impose that upon them if everything is subjective than to impose upon them what to like or who to love, if morality is simply subjective. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I was thinking a little bit more about morality itself, and that's why I was thinking we need to define some things. And I'd like feedback on this. Because if you're saying I can still have subjective morality, but I can also push other people to sort of accept, I can push my government to accept my morality, etc., etc. And especially if you can push that onto your children. Someone even said, what if my subjective set of ethics is that it's okay to indoctrinate your children? Well, that's hypocritical, of course, right? Because what you're really talking about then is a sort of a sociopathy, right? What you're really saying is, well, it's subjective, but only I'm entitled to it, right? Because you have to remember, I think it's important to remember that when we talk about these concepts, unless you're alone, they have to be universalized, right? And so we'll get to the universal definition of morality in a second. So if you're saying that morality is subjective, if you universalize that principle, that means everyone is entitled to their own set of subjective ethics. And of course, if you're not willing to accept that, then really what you're talking about is sort of a tyranny of one, which is going to lead to a lot of conflict. Because what you have to remember about a lot of these principles is they're going to be universalized whether you do it or not. In other words, if you think that morality is subjective, but only you are entitled to act in that fashion based on your own internal set of ethics, then everyone else is going to do the same thing, right? Or they're at least entitled to. They're going to say, well, morality is subjective, but only my subjective ethics are important, so I'm going to act upon those, right? So I still think it's double-minded to claim to believe that morality is subjective and then to act as though morality is objective, especially with regards to your emotionally and mentally immature children, to sort of impose that upon them. It's a double-minded thing, because really what you're saying is that they're not entitled to the same subjectivity that you are. And, before everybody sort of says, hey, you can teach them how to think and not what to think, and they're entitled and blah, 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 the majority of parents don't do that, right? If they continue to do something that we think is immoral, we are going to correct them, we are going to correct them, we are going to correct them. Don't tell me it happens any different in your house. I'd like to see proof. Anyway, so that got me thinking about, of course, the definition of morality. And I think it's important that we start there. Not the definition itself, but the characteristics of morality. Because I think when we talk about objectivity, there's a offshoot of that is universality. And that, I think, is a characteristic of morality, right? Is that it's a principle that needs to be universalized to have any meaning whatsoever. So that's something I'd like your help with. I'd like your feedback on that. Do you think that morality is a universal concept? In other words, that it needs to apply to everyone for it to have any value at all? And I would argue, of course, that it does. Because if it doesn't, if morality doesn't apply to everybody, if it's not a universal concept, then once again, who says that any other person has to abide by, and under what authority, under whose standards can you impose that upon someone else? So I think we need to recognize that morality is a concept that needs to be universalized. You can't claim it for yourself, but then say that other people are not subject to it, or vice versa. And then I think when it comes down to the standards, I think it makes it a little easier to see that possibly it would be important to have a universal set of standards, an objective set of standards under that heading of morality. Because once again, how do you impose your set of ethics on someone else? And we do it. That's, once again, getting back to what I would say the hypocrisy of this all is, we do it, right? We go to foreign lands to install democracies and to impose our morality on other people. We do it. And then say that morality is subjective. And the one thing I will say about the double-mindedness is just, I think it's helpful to pay attention to the language that you're using. So I've seen when people are making comments to me, they'll talk about subjective morality, but then they'll talk about the best solution, and they'll talk about a better solution until being proved wrong. They'll say moral oughts, and oughts not, and these sorts of things. This is all language that speaks towards an ideal, right? Anything that talks about something being better than something else, something that you should or should not do, oughts and oughts not, and being proven wrong, what you're talking about here is an ideal. So you're using the language of the ideal, of the objective, and claiming the subjective. So that's sort of a little bit more of what I'm talking about. And actually, I'd like to see somebody address that, particularly somebody using that language while proposing that morality is simply subjective. Can you square that circle for me somehow, the language that you're using and this claim of subjectivity? The other thing I did want to say is somebody pointed out correctly that when I was in my last video saying that it wasn't an ad hominem attack to point out hypocrisy, and I'd said it was a refutation. That was really, really sloppy of me. You gotta love video, right? Because I've never taken a video down. I'll leave up all my mistakes too. And that was sloppy of me. Really what I meant to say is it is an exposition of double-mindedness. It's not a refutation of the concepts, but it is a refutation of the claim that the person has internalized and accepted a premise when they actually behave a different way. It is a refutation of that, but it's not a refutation of, really it's just an exposition of double-mindedness, and it's still not an ad hominem attack. And so I stand by that, but I appreciate the correction, and I really do appreciate, I'm trying to stay on top of the new video a little bit better, but I'll try to go back to some of the comments in the first video. I'm loving this exchange. I can't promise I'm going to be able to keep up this level of response when I go back to work next week, but I'm digging it for now. Thanks everyone for engaging, for watching the videos, and look forward to more. Thanks for watching.